Good morning. It's, what's the date? Today is June 29th, and it's a cleanup day. And I'm going through, you can see this mess. It's like starting to come together. Hopefully, over the next couple days and weeks, you'll notice that I'll start to get this place set up a little bit more nicely. And one of the things I'm cleaning up right now is some of the travel receipts, just like going through them. Things I probably should have tossed a while ago. Should have. And I'm going through that right now. Oh, and it's just kind of making me think that I always had the intention. So over the last maybe 2 years, I think that this whole path has really unfolded. I guess like you could say that everything that happened before this point led up to this this moment, of course. But I think one there's some things that just happen really just kind of like seem to fall in place, right? And I'm like looking at this camera right now, and it's like I think I'm going to run out of batteries, but we're going to forge ahead. So, and I had always wanted to just take a minute and just recount that somewhere so that I could remember it. I've told this to various different people at different times, and I never really recorded it for myself. So now I'm going to go back to 2024 July to the Hypnosis conference, HypnoThoughts Live 2024. And I think that is one of those places where I really started to feel this, to feel like the strategy really aligning. Ooh, I can put a battery in here. I'm going to do that so that I don't run out of gas here. So 2024, I had signed up for Hypnosis conference. Even before then, I had intended to go for this Hypnosis conference in, what was it? In 2020 was the first year that I had signed up. So 2019, taking you all the way back. 2019, I had done my hypnosis training, and that's kind of the start of a lot of different paths unfolding. But of course, so one of the big things there was the hypnosis conference in Las Vegas, one of the biggest and best hypnosis conferences in the world. And I had got my ticket, I had signed up, and 2020, I had my ticket, I was ready to go. And I bought my plane ticket and everything. And then the pandemic happened. And of course, I wanted to go, but I couldn't go. It was pretty much impossible. And that year was pretty interesting as well because they had to change the whole conference. It went online. I attended online and all of this. And then that year was the year that I also started to work online with people. So it was really exciting. I was doing hypnosis. I was doing hypnosis online, practicing, and just really excited to kind of like learn more. I ended up learning online. I attended a David Snyder 3-day seminar, and it was really interesting watching from, I think I was sitting like over there at the time. I'd move. One of the things that I do is rearrange my space quite a bit. So I was sitting over there attending this conference, and it was a great experience, but it was not the HypnoThoughts experience. I was promised like hanging out at the Crocodile Bar at the New Orleans Hotel, and really looking forward to that kind of environment and that party. It didn't happen. And then, of course, the next year, 2021, pandemic was still on. Didn't really get to there. And for whatever reason, was it the first year I went? I can't even, no, maybe that was the second year. So the first year that I went was 2023, and that was a lot of fun. I saw a lot of the storm riders from the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy, and we were chilling, hanging out, and that was really great. Connected with a bunch of wonderful people. Sandra and Robert stand out. And if you're watching this, hello. Then the year after, I think the in-person Mike Mandel trainings started happening again. So I attended that, and that's where I met Sean. And Sean was into human design at the time, so we connected over that. Maybe later, a little bit later actually. So we started coming together and talking about, and all of this becomes important. You'll see. So I connected with Sean. We spoke online a couple times, and we always had great conversations talking about hypnosis and human design, and then various other things. He's actually the one who introduced me to this metaphysical anatomy book, which is really interesting. I'm gonna pop it up over here. Metaphysical anatomy. It's like a really thick book. Really interesting stuff. So then fast forward to 2024, or let's go back to 2024, where I had started this story, but then decided to go further back. I was getting ready to go, excited for the HypnoThoughts, and then I messaged Sean, because we were talking about human design at the time, talking about like how we could do readings together, and it was a really good exploration and learning process. But I said, hey, like, are you going to HypnoThoughts? And he said, oh, I wasn't sure. But then his sacral gut response 2 weeks before kind of told him, like, yes, I'm going to go and make this happen. So he signed up, and he went. And it turned out that it was really great that he did. He arrived, so he's from BC. He arrived, like, I think the morning that I was supposed to arrive, like maybe one day before or something, a little bit earlier, and he got a hotel room. What happened was I went to the airport. I was waiting for my flight, and then my flight got canceled. First time my flight ever got canceled. That was an interesting experience. I was sitting there, and it was like, oh, the plane is delayed. They got to do like, I don't know, like maintenance or whatever they call it. Delay. And it got canceled. And I have to, at this point, thank Chris from my EMBA class, because at this point I was one term into the MBA as well. And he used to work for WestJet, and I was flying WestJet. I was like, hey, like my flight got canceled. What do I do? And he gave me all this great information and kind of things of where to go and who to like get in touch with and stuff like that to kind of like try and get my money back or whatever. But really, it sounded like if I didn't get another flight out, I don't know what would have happened. Like, it's usually what happens when a flight gets canceled is they'll put you on another flight. And the email that I got eventually was like, my next flight would have been the next day. It would have been connecting. It would probably been like a 12 or a 24-hour travel day. So what I did was, as soon as my flight got canceled, I went online. I saw that there were flights available. I bought the flight. And I bought the next flight on. There were like 4 or 5 tickets left. So I literally, like, the flight was canceled. I went out. I had a carry-on only. So went out through customs, went back into the line with my new ticket, and got on board a plane like 1 or 2 hours later. And it turns out that it was really good that I did that, because that was the same day that the cloud strike happened, when like all of like Microsoft and like Outlook and Teams and everything went down. And basically like so much technology went down. A lot of flights were just not even flying anymore. So if I didn't get on that plane and was waiting for the next one, I don't know if I would have even made it to HypnoThoughts. So there's like these synchronicities starting to happen, right? The timing was perfect. I got on another plane. I ended up in Las Vegas that same night. Got there about maybe like 10 or 11, and I met up with Sean. And I was standing there in line, and there was a huge line at the hotel. And it's because all of their systems went down. And because their systems went down, I wasn't able to get my hotel room. But Sean was there, and he had gotten his hotel room earlier in the day, so I actually had a place to stay that night. He graciously offered me his to stay with him in his room, and that was really nice. So I had a place to stay, and then like throughout the next couple days, like just kind of more interesting things happened. So at this point, I was maybe about like I'm gonna say about like a year into like serious like human design kind of experimenting with my strategy and authority. And at this conference, I was just literally following my strategy and authority, like looking for invitations and then following my Splenic Authority, which is like an intuitive knowing in the now. And one of those times when there was like this intuitive hit was like it was the first day before any of the sessions happened, and I was standing there at the schedule, and then this person like walks up next to me and starts looking at the schedule. I was like, "Oh, hello. What session are you going to?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm going to go to this one." And then she started going. I was like, "Okay, I'll come with you." And this was Christian. So I walked off with her, and she's like, "Okay, sure. I guess this is happening." So then we walked off and sat down, and we were chatting, and we had, we attended a couple sessions together, which was cool. And then like we exchanged contacts, parted ways. I was like, okay, like, hey, where are you? Let's like chill and like whatever, hang out. And it's funny because she's like got a second line in her chart, and um, her family actually lives in Las Vegas. So then she was going there, and I was like, okay, like, cool. Whatever happens, happens. Um, if if we're gonna like run into each other or whatever, um, it'll happen. So I kind of let that sit for a while. And the other thing was hanging out with like my um, hypnosis crew, and especially with Sean, we spent a lot of that conference together, playing around with human design, especially with our environments. So I think he was Cave's environment and I'm Shore's. So basically, this kind of describes the different environments that you find yourself in. And the idea is you have certain environments that match better to, or kind of like are energetically better for you. So he's kind of good with like a Cave's environment where it's like kind of like a space that has like one entrance type of thing. And for me, Shores is kind of like a transitional environment. So um, what I ended up doing was I spent a lot of time hanging out in the hallways outside of the sessions. I attended some, but I spent a lot of time outside of that, and just waiting and just opening myself up for invitations. And I had a lot of like interesting experiences. Like I sat down next to this other lady who was presenting for the very first time, and she was a little bit nervous, and I was like, cool, like, how you doing? You ready for your session? Awesome. Let's go in. And I attended her session. Another time was coming, so there were vendor tables there as well. So I had a nice chat with Richard Hill, who's like amazing. He wrote the book Mirroring Hands. I worked with Ernest Rossi, who trained and worked and studied under Milton Erickson, who's another huge, who's one of like the best. I guess it's, there's always like arguments about who's the best, but um, got to have a nice, so Milton Erickson, got to have a nice chat with Richard Hill. It's always nice to see him. And then, um, and then in the hallways was where I ran into Christian again. And I guess the first time that first time that we were talking, I was talking about how I'm like a human design reader and all of this. I had just recently got certified. I think like right before the conference. So I ran into her again, and she's like, "Hey, I have a podcast, and I've been looking to talk to a human design reader. Would you like to be on it?" And I was like, "Holy crap! Like this is an invitation." So I was like, "Yes." And then, kind of, so we connected, and I was excited about that plan, and that's kind of like how all of these things started to come together. Um, that kind of led up to here. Like the rest of the conference was a lot of fun, hanging out, just meeting a whole bunch of different people. A lot of great people that I had connected with for the very first time. Um, like I even think of Michelle, who's a hypnotist, I think based out in New York. I'm not sure where she is now, but meeting her, I ended up connecting with her later on afterwards because she does this thing called NeuroGraphica. She was doing a training, and I was lucky enough or privileged enough to have one of her early sessions, and I found my NeuroGraphica kind of artwork that I did with her, and like, look at this thing, right? Like this is kind of like art therapy, but like to the max. And this was going through this process was a lot of fun. It's one of those things that I'm looking back at it, and right now actually I can like looking at it, I can feel kind of like some of the energy flowing through as I'm reflecting on it. So another great person, like met all these wonderful people, and I think it's like some of those things were meant to kind of like carry forward, and some of them I believe are going to come back at another time. There's so many people that I've connected with in different ways, and it's not always like I guess like for me as a projector, I think that the what I'm starting to realize is that theme of success. So that's the signature of the projector. That theme of success is more kind of like flow and going with the flow, and really kind of like being in my element, and um, looking, I guess, like waiting for the invitation, in the sense that like there are going to be people that recognize me in the moment, in the now, and that's kind of where I need to follow. That's where I need to follow. Um, so following that energy, um, like after that trip, I continued to stay connected with Christian, and we've had like so many conversations about various things: human design, hypnosis, metaphysics, quantum physics, and all sorts of like woo kind of stuff. Um, if you are interested in her story, she talks about her awakening. She used to be a nurse, and now she's um, working on her like hypnosis, quantum hypnosis business. So she's a quantum hypnotist and a Reiki master. Oh, and I think I'm gonna have to do a part two, because this is like way too long, and this all gets connected. But basically, what happens is we stayed connected. We ended up doing a podcast together, and kind of she's building her business on one side, and I'm building my business over here as well. So then that's kind of like we've been kind of like helping each other out, supporting each other, and just saying like kind of encouraging each other in this whole process. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about right now as I'm going through all of this, like looking through kind of like old receipts. One of the things that I I would do, especially, or one of the things that I was having difficulty with a lot, was letting go of things. That even speaks to like receipts and stuff like that. Like I'm much better now. Like if you think this is a mess, like you should have seen me like 10 or 20 years ago. Like the amount of crap that I have, and Adrian would um, Adrian would definitely agree agree with this. Um, she probably still looks and sees like all the mess that I have still. So there's always more work to be done. But anyways, that's where I first kind of ran into Christian, and where a lot of this work right now is starting to come together. Because I think through hypnosis, there's, um, I guess, like when I first did the hypnosis training in 2019, I really, my like world just opened up. I remember being in that training, and actually, I remember at the end of that training, at the after party, I was like, people were coming up to me and was like, "Oh, are you going to do a hypnosis show? Hypnosis show?" And I was like, "I guess so. Like that'd be kind of cool." But after all of this stuff I learned, and especially like with my background in healthcare, and I've always had this drive to help people, um, I was like, "No, I want to like take this and use it and kind of do all the change work and all that really cool stuff of like helping people move past limiting beliefs and phobias and like whatever else." Um, Kind of things that they're dealing with. And then I recalled that at the beginning of that session, when we all do the icebreakers, and it was like, okay, like what brought you here? Um, at that time, I realized now, I realized like a little bit afterwards, not like now, like 6 years after, um, that I had said in that time, like I got into hypnosis because I found myself at the training because I used to do a lot of sleight of hand magic. So uh, I had come across hypnosis in terms of like performance, like stage and street hypnosis, where like, you put people to sleep, or put people in a trance and then have them like do funny things. They put on a show. And I had said that's how I got there. But really, it was like, I think that interest in the possibility of doing something like that was um, in the back of my mind. But I think that's more of like that kind of directionality of like, this is kind of the general direction I'm going. I don't know what I'm moving towards, but I'm moving towards this thing, and I think it's because of like my past and my history of sleight of hand magic in terms of like performance and putting on shows and stuff like that. And that's kind of where I came across Wayne, who was the hypnotist at a corporate conference, and I had watched the show, and as like something was different about how he made his how he did his show. It just seemed like professional is not really the right word. It just seemed like he knew what he was doing. He was so confident. He was so good at what he was doing, and he had such stage presence. And I just felt like this guy knows what he's doing. So I went up to him at the end of that conference, or at the end of his performance, and I was like, hey, like I need, like, I want to learn. Where can I learn, basically? And he's Canadian as well. I think he's based out in Edmonton. And he asked me where I was from, and he said, I said Toronto. He says, I know, I have somebody for you. So I emailed him, and he connected me with Mike and Chris. And then I guess the rest is the history that I had just shared with you, I think, of like going through the training and all of this stuff. There's probably a lot of like pieces in there, like breadcrumbs that I'm dropping. But yeah, it's just interesting how, like, looking back, threading all of these things together, and all of this kind of brings me into like early 2022. I had, or even, yeah, this, no, not early 2022. We're at like towards the tail end of summer 2024 right now. So I was about to go into my second term of my MBA and all of this, and I think this is a good place to take a pause, because that whole kind of like thread of synchronicities, I think it's just like, it felt like things really lined up when I was following my strategy and authority to relax into the process of allowing things to unfold for myself, and being confident that if I show up in the right spaces and show up in a way that's authentically me, then I would get noticed and recognized. I was like, I didn't go to that conference to expect to be invited onto a podcast because of a human design reader certification that I'd finished a short while ago. But that is what happened. So this is a good place to pause, because this brings me, like the tail end of 2024 was just really getting through term 2 of my MBA. And then really looking forward to this away trip. In term 3, we would do a trip over to Vietnam, which actually is kind of like this other decision that I had made based on how I was feeling, like my intuition. Because when I had applied for the program initially, I had the opportunity to start 1 term earlier, and I would have gone to Brazil. And that would have been a really cool trip as well, I think. But the decision to defer and start 1 term later was based on wanting to go back to Vietnam, because that's where my parents were born, and that's where they were raised, and that's where they had come over to Canada from. And I had never been there, and I was like, okay, like Vietnam, it's like it's calling to me. Like, this is a very clear invitation, because I was accepted into the program and then just given this opportunity. So Vietnam was the invitation, and that kind of opened up a whole new kind of path for me. And there's so many like synchronicities there. If I look back now after finishing the program, there's so many things that lined up because of that. And that's going to be tomorrow. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow, because I'm going through all my receipts here, and I'll just preview that. I ended up from that Vietnam trip meeting some of the best friends that I've ever made in my whole life, and also ending up in Japan, which are these receipts that I'm trying to clear right now. So this was nice. I feel like this was much more of like a log or a reflection, rather than like sitting here. I think I was getting into like teaching mode in some of those earlier kind of logs, and hopefully that you've made it through all the way through some of those, if not all of those, and then over here to listening to me ramble about this. So we'll continue this story tomorrow.